John, I don't have any mute power.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, Democrats!
Good evening, Democrats!
Well, that's good for a regular meeting, but this is the SD24 debate. So let's get everyone on Zoom to unmute for a moment. Everyone here, pay attention for a moment. And in 3, 2, 1, good evening, Democrats! That's pretty good. Now, everybody on Zoom, mute yourself. That's it. Shh. Ladies and gentlemen, in here, out there, thank you so much for being here for our September membership meeting, which is also our SD24 State Senate debate. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, I just want to reminisce on what a great picnic we had last month. Who was here from the picnic? Raise your hand if you went to it. Folks, we had such a great time. There were 200 people there. We raised a lot of money for the club, which we're going to put into action in next year's election and this year's election. We'll get to that. I want to bring up the two principal people who are behind the picnic. We've got some stuff to talk about. Let's welcome our Programs VP, Michelle Grant, and our Political Action VP, Sean Kaloji. Oops, you okay?
Did I knock this down?
It's on. It's good.
Sean did it. It's turned off.
Oh, wait.
You've got it on your head.
No. There's got to be another. Nate's got it.
Testing. You could do this one.
Okay, that works. So thank you all who came to the picnic, who helped make it so special, who helped me and Sean and everyone get it ready. We so appreciate it. It was such a success. We're doing it again. So mark your calendars for next August 16th. It's going to be an annual picnic, the third Sunday in August every year. Also, a couple of announcements. No Kings 2, October 18th, 11 a.m., Palisades Park. Same bat place, same bat channel. What we did last time. We had 5,000 plus people out there. We expect to do even more this time. So watch, there'll be emails shortly with details. And then the Magic Show fundraiser. I produce magic shows with my partner, Albie Selznick. Wave, Albie. Albie is a magician. My business partner, he's married to Laura. And on November 2nd, that Sunday, we're going to have a magic show fundraiser for the club at Illusion Magic Lounge on 4th.
And we have amazing magicians from the Magic Castle, like the top two.
That was my next slide, I promise. And Albie's hosting, and tickets are on sale, and the QR code is on the sign-in table, and we'll be sending out more information tomorrow. So I hope you're all able to make it. There will be some pay-what-you-can tickets available. Just send me an email and we'll take care of you. Here you go.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming today. We're really excited to be presenting the Senate District 24 candidate debate. Next week, mark your calendars for the 17th, and that's when we will be having our endorsement vote. But don't come here because it's only going to be on Zoom. So just go ahead and take that Zoom and be online. And we're going to be doing the endorsement vote for the Senate District 24 race, but also for our state treasurer race and for some other statewide offices, including Attorney General, Secretary of State, Controller, and also for State Proposition 50, which we all know is so important, and we're going to have that special election this year in order to have our response to the election rigging that's happening around the country so that we can work to make sure that we take back Congress. Very important, we're going to have that vote. And then subsequently, we're looking to organize some canvassing, some phone banking, so we really would appreciate everyone getting active and helping us volunteer and participate in terms of that. In terms of eligibility for all these endorsement votes, if you are already a member of the club as of 30 days prior to the 17th, then you can participate. If you are looking to become a new member, you will not be able to participate in this particular endorsement vote. So if you are a member for 2025, you can participate. If you were a member in 2024, you can check with Mike Soloff and our membership team, and you would be able to renew for 2025 up into the vote. Please, if you want to do that earlier so that we can make sure that we have everyone's registration up to date and we can have a smooth vote. Mike, did I get everything I need on the membership question?
Other than
I
that,
think I did.
You get the details?
Then,
Make sure.
the other thing I want to mention is our subsequent meeting to that, October 29. We're going to have a bunch of additional special guests. We're going to have Los Angeles Community College District Board member Nichelle Henderson, who's running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And we're going to have Lieutenant Governor candidate Janelle Kalman. We may have some additional candidates coming as well. So we have a busy calendar in our future meetings. Make sure you come to the Zoom, and then on October 29, we're going to have another in-person meeting, and that's going to be here, right, John?
Yeah.
That's going to be also at this location. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. And one correction, or one addition, I guess, from our membership VP, Mike Soloff, is to make sure that if you have the ability, please do renew your membership. If you are in the category of 2024 member who hasn't renewed yet, please do it before the day of the meeting, because it makes it much more complicated if Mike has to sit there and figure it all out live.
And sign up for the meeting.
Sorry.
Time.
And
At a
yeah.
time.
Okay. Yes.
Verify your ability.
This is very important. If you want to vote next week on this endorsement and the other endorsements that Sean talked about, you have to do two things. You have to be a member, and you have to have signed up for the meeting, not tonight's meeting, but the September 17th meeting. If you've got both of those covered, you'll get the ballot. So make sure you sign up in advance so that we can check your membership before the moment that the meeting starts and make sure that your membership status is all good. Now that that's out of the way, we have one more quick announcement from our recording secretary, Lynn Servini.
I'm also a member of the ad hoc Know Your Rights Committee, and we are launching a campaign to show that Santa Monica stands with immigrant families. As part of the campaign, each volunteer will be asked to deliver a sign, just like that, to many of the local businesses in Santa Monica, and 5 of them. So each person will present a sign to 5 different businesses, and showing that Santa Monica stands for immigrants. In addition to that sign, we have a whole bunch of red cards at the table that you can pick up that have instructions for if you're ever stopped. And these days, it's not just immigrants, it's anybody is stopped. You have rights, and they're listed on these red cards, so you can hand them out to people so they can read them if they're ever confronted with ICE. Another sheet that you can hand out is also this brown sheet that has a hotline, that if you see something, this is the number to call. If you're in danger, this is the number to call. It's put out by West Los, which is a West LA group, and they answer very, very quickly. And the poster is more than just a poster. It's a visible affirmation that Santa Monica values families, immigrant families. In a time of fear, a sign in a local business says, "You are seen, you are supported, you belong here." Since June, ICE has made over 4,000 arrests in Los Angeles, an average of 68 people every single day. Most had no criminal convictions. Raids at car washes, including the one on Lincoln Avenue here in Santa Monica, and even a detention of a Santa Monica College student have spread fear across our community. So here's what you can do today. grab 5 signs from that table by the door on your way out to share to local businesses. Sign up on a sign-up sheet. I have them down there on that chair somewhere. Or Michelle has them. Are those the sign-up? She's going to pass them maybe one sign-up sheet here and one over there. And I want you to put your email, your name, so that, and where you'd like to pass out the signs, what area of Santa Monica. And I can email you with a short script to use when you're talking to business owners and managers. And invite other people, friends, neighbors, coworkers, to join you. And small actions add up to real impact. Every sign we place is a visible pledge that Santa Monica is a place for safety, support, and solidarity. So I hope we have lots of volunteers and we can spread those signs all over Santa Monica so everyone knows that we support immigrants.
Thank you, Lynn. That was beautifully said. And it's a tough day to do a Dem Club meeting, you know. I want to take a moment just to acknowledge the assassination that happened today. But we don't have all the details yet, but this club clearly condemns all political violence in every form. And we're saddened by these events and by the fact that acts like this continue to happen in our country. And until we pass meaningful gun safety legislation, these violent acts are going to continue, regardless of ideology. For anyone who thinks that somehow this is a victory because he was a political opponent, I just want to clearly say you're mistaken. Violence only leads to more violence, and nothing good comes from it. And I'm very afraid that this is a really destabilizing moment in what's already been a traumatic year. But this community will stand together, and we will support everybody in our community. And let's try to move forward with a positive vision from this debate we have in front of us here. It's very exciting, folks. It's the race to succeed Senator Ben Allen. And 12 years ago, Senator Ben Allen was school board member Ben Allen and also Santa Monica Democratic Club board member Ben Allen. And he was on the board as we, 12 years ago, had a debate for this same seat, a little different shape. And in fact, one of the candidates who was on the debate stage 12 years ago is here in the audience, Barbie Applequist, who's our former Dem Club board member. So, you know, we're glad to come full circle, and now instead of being up here, you get to just watch everybody. But let's just get right to it. We have 7 candidates here with 7 different visions for our district. I'm going to introduce all of them to come up to the stage. You can applaud as they come up, take pictures, a group photo, and then we'll get right to the debate. So let's please welcome Palos Verdes Peninsula School Board member Eric Alegria, neighborhood leader and civil rights activist Ellen Evans, Santa Monica College Board of Trustees Vice Chair Dr. Cheyenne Roy, Democratic strategist and small business owner Brian Goldsmith, West Hollywood Councilmember John Erickson, former LA Planning Commissioner Mike Newhouse, and LA Human Relations Committee President Brittany McKinley. You guys all want to stand, and maybe someone come up and take a picture for the gram of this illustrious slate of Democrats. And then we'll send it right to Politico Playbook tonight. All right. So really quick, I'll just establish some rules that I think you all know, but just so people at home know as well. The responses will all be 1 minute, unless I'll say otherwise. There'll be just a couple of hand raise opportunities, but mostly it'll be 1 minute responses. If your name is invoked by another candidate, you have the opportunity to respond for 30 seconds, but that's not automatic. You'll just, if you hear your name, just kind of let me know, and I'll share the 30 seconds with you. I may not catch it or something like that, and you may want to skip the opportunity to respond to. So only if you want that. The order for each question will be randomized, random.org. I have all your names in here. We'll shuffle it up, so it'll be, you won't know when you're coming up. Our club member, Samantha Mota, where's Sam? Right here. There she is. Oh, yeah. So she's our timekeeper tonight. You can watch her. She's going to be keeping the 1 minute. When we're 10 seconds from the end, she's going to give a little wave. When we're at 0, she'll say time. You can finish your sentence. That's totally fine. Keep talking, right? Yeah. If you keep talking, you'll find out from Sam. She'll make sure that you stop talking. So we'll finish. It'll be a. I'd like to apologize to these two because they're probably going to be yelled like real loud. So I'm sorry. Okay. So that's the plan. Let's just get right into it. Guys, there's a lot happening in our region and around the world right now. When you get sworn in as senator, there'll be a lot on your plate on day one. What is the single most important issue you believe our district faces, and what sets you above the field as the best candidate on that issue? And first up is Brian Goldsmith.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I'm going to be political and sort of answer the question and say that I think there are two. Number one is the cost of living. We're losing Californians to the deserts of Nevada and Arizona, which is not a natural act. We're pushing them out. And that's because it's become too expensive to build a family here, to build a home here, to operate a small business, to build the infrastructure we need. And we have to get on top of that if the California dream is going to survive for the next generation. And the second, after what happened today, we have to turn down the temperature of our politics. We have to address the hate and division in our society. We can't go on like this. And as you said, John, assassination leads to more violence. More violence leads to further assassinations. We had a school shooting today in addition to what happened to Charlie Kirk. We have to get on top of this.
Time. Well done. Okay, let's hear from John Erickson.
We are facing an affordability crisis like we're all going to talk about, but that's a housing affordability crisis. People are traveling 20 to 30 miles to get to their jobs, which means that we have an infrastructure crisis and we have a cost of living crisis. I think the main thing that we're facing here in this district, but in California overall, is that we are not building for the future of our district, but we're not building for the future of our county. That's where we need regional success and regional leaders like myself, having served as now Vice President of California Contract Cities, 84 out of the cities in California, and I will be president next year. But a person with regional success, having been just the mayor of the city of West Hollywood, investing in those services and investing in infrastructure and how we lead a city. West Hollywood is the only city on the west side with a $31 million budget surplus when I was mayor, $11 million this year, and we're directly investing that back into our community.
Thanks. Let's go to Eric Allegria. Should be a...
Thank you for the question, John, and great to be with all of you, to meet several of you this evening. My colleagues have identified a couple, all mentioned public safety as a focus, and I'll say this with the umbrella of emergency preparedness as part of that. As the leader of Rancho Palos Verdes, as mayor and two-term city council member, we took enormous steps to ensure that we had preparedness in terms of fire remediation and ensuring that our community was ready. I think there's a unique opportunity as climate change continues to evolve for us to apply some of those same learnings, improvements in coordination, and ensure that we are ensuring the safety of our local residents across the district. And then secondly, to the tune of tonight, John, I'm glad you mentioned the sad events and tragic events. It's bringing people back together and making sure that we recognize each other as Americans first and that we embrace one another despite whatever our policy differences may be. Thank you.
Let's go to Mike Newhouse.
Hey, everybody. look, this affordability issue, it's the personal becomes the political, right? For me, my experience was, I grew up in a home sort of barely middle class. Father was extremely drug addicted, had severe bipolar issues, and lost everything. We lost our home, lost our businesses, and I spent high school with my father in and out of jail. I started working, sweeping floors in a movie theater at 15. My mother and I helped raise my brother and sister, who were 10 years younger than me. We ran from the landlord. Essentially what it was, moved 5-6 times in high school until I was finally able to work hard, get a partial scholarship to college. I had a lot of need-based help in college. And luckily my grandfather was I get a little choked up thinking about it. My grandfather was a union carpenter, taught me his trade. And I was a shop kid in junior high and high school. And I made my way through college as a carpenter. And so my point is that I've sort of lived hand to mouth. I worked very hard and I've got a good, middle class existence now, and I've been lucky and I have a good family, but it's a very real thing for people out there that are having trouble making ends meet. And I think it's very important that the people representing them in Sacramento know what that's like, know what that feels like, and know how to overcome that. So that's the way I come at it.
Thanks. Let's go to Cheyenne Roy.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you, everybody, and thank you to all the candidates for coming to our club here. I'm a physician at Harbor UCLA. We're a big safety net public hospital that serves South LA, mostly communities of color. At least a third of our patients are undocumented. I was previous president of the LA County Medical Association, and the reason that I'm running is to help shore up the safety net, including Medi-Cal. We're in Sacramento, we are losing 2 physicians in the assembly and leaving just a singular physician over the next decade in the Senate, and I would be that second physician in the legislature. And as the federal government has cut Medi-Cal, the state is gutting Medi-Cal and taking undocumented patients off Medi-Cal. Not only is it a social justice issue, but it's a fiscal responsibility issue, because by doing all of this, it's going to increase the cost on the taxpayer and be socially unjust. And I'm running to go up there and help lead a way out of that.
Thank you. Brittany McKinley.
Thank you, everyone. Really happy to be here with you all. Not to beat a dead horse, but affordability, of course, is a major issue, but a great threat to affordability right now when we talk about housing, when we talk about healthcare, when we talk about the general cost of living is Trump. Trump is a great threat to affordability in California. Standing up to Trump is incredibly important. As president of the Human Relations Commission, I have been doing that work, whether it's been in standing up for immigrant communities, whether it's been standing up for LGBTQ plus communities. And as an attorney, I understand the importance of litigation and how in suing Trump 37 times in just over 6 months, that's more than once a week, we have been able to protect 1/3 of the state's budget. And we've been able to get back $11.1 billion of federal funding that can go to combating cuts against education and healthcare. So we need someone with this experience who is going to stand up against Trump and make sure that he does not make these affordability issues even worse.
Thanks. And finally, that would be Ellen Evans.
So I want to make California as strong as possible, because we need to be able to be strong to fight against the federal government, and we need to be strong in order to provide what the federal government isn't providing anymore, and we need to be strong to win Democratic voters back to our side. And in becoming strong, we need to provide what people need. As a neighborhood leader and a mom, I know people need safety, people need opportunity, and people need affordability. And there are 2 policy areas I want to focus on, sorry, not just one, that I think can provide those and at the same time make us strong. So housing affordability is obviously one. We have destroyed the on-ramp to the middle class, and we need to build it back up again. And number 2 is grid modernization, capacity building, and storage building, because we can hurtle towards our clean, green energy, fire-safe future, providing jobs.
Great. Thank you so much. Now let's go to the next question. We have a few questions on the topic of housing. First is a yes or no question, but don't worry, you will definitely get a chance to explain right after. So if Scott Wiener's SB 79 came to a vote tonight in its current form, would you vote yes or no? If you would vote yes, raise your hand. Okay, and if you'd vote no, raise your hand. Okay, and Brian, are you Got it. Okay. So this is the, he said he hasn't seen the final form and he'd want to see which neighborhoods are affected before he weighed in. Do you feel that the amendments added to the bills in recent weeks have adequately addressed displacement concerns? If yes, how? And if not, what else would you like to see in this bill to get to a yes? And first up is Eric Allegria.
Thank you very much for the question. This is an important issue and a complicated issue. Certainly affordability is a challenge, and housing is a dramatic need. But the current approach over the last 5 years of legislation from Sacramento has lost sight of the importance of the local voice in crafting its own outcome. And over 2 terms on City Council, Palos Verdes, we engaged in debates, important debates about proper planning, smart growth, being thoughtful and allowing the folks on the ground closest to the problem to help solve the problem in terms of identifying what makes sense to each local community. In my own community, we had significant issues with high fire severity zones and ingress and egress concerns of which we debated. And there's many other challenges. I trust the people on the ground in the local planning commissions to have the thoughtful debates and get the community input to figure out what makes sense to each unique community. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's hear from Mike.
Yeah, so look, I have approved thousands upon thousands of units of housing as a city planning commissioner over the last 10 years. I represent builders of housing. It is one of the main issues that I advocate for in this campaign. Common sense dictates we need to build housing, and a ton of it, in places where it belongs, close to transit-oriented corridors, commercial, mixed-use areas, urban infill, adaptive reuse of existing buildings. Common sense also dictates that if you live in a single-family neighborhood, be it in Beverly Hills or South Central Los Angeles, asking somebody in that neighborhood to be okay with a 4 to 7 story building next door to them is not fair to ask. And on top of it, we talked about the displacement issue. One of the biggest issues we'll run into here is in poorer communities, a lot that was worth $800,000, you can now build 25 units on. It's now worth $5 million. Good luck buying into that neighborhood if you're a local person, a working class person, and good luck staying there when developers are offering you $5 million for your lot. You want gentrification? That's what would happen with the current version of the bill. Having said that, I love 90% of SB 79, and I hope that it's going to get where it needs to get in the next couple of days, because I would love to support it in a different form.
Thanks. Brian.
My view is we need to build a lot more housing. We need a lot more affordable housing. The biggest single driver of our affordability crisis is a housing crisis. There are other candidates who are saying we can turn back the clock to before all the legislation out of Sacramento, before builder's remedy, before authority was stripped from our communities. And I'm running to tell the truth, which is that these laws are not going to get repealed. And I would like to move to a place where the debate is over how and where to put the housing, not whether we build the housing. And I would like to get to a formula where, as long as the number of units that is supposed to be constructed is actually being constructed, local control begins to return. I think it's irresponsible for me as a candidate to say I would vote yes or no on something when it's a moving target. I haven't seen the final language. I haven't seen the analysis of which neighborhoods are affected. I would like to do that, and then I will give an answer about my view.
Great. Brittany.
I think that we need to build for density where it makes sense. The reason why I would not vote for SB 79 in its current form is because it takes away local control. We have to have local voices to address local issues. As commission president, we would never approach solving an issue for a community without community voices. And I understand the importance of community voices in crafting solutions for a community.
Great. Thank you. And now let's hear from Shai.
Ellen, what did you do to the randomization thing? Going last. Affordability, housing, lack of housing is the number one thing that drives unaffordability in California, in our district. That is absolutely true. Now, this district itself is, the different communities have such different needs. You go from the Santa Monica Mountains, where the biggest threat is geography and fire, into more urban areas like Santa Monica and into Hollywood, and then you go, the coastal part of the district down to the South Bay, and they all have different local needs. And so in terms of SB 79's target of building more housing near transit, I'm absolutely for that. And, the folks that work at Santa Monica College can't live near where they work because of this affordability crisis. But that being said, local control is important. In LA, where the geography is so different in different places. And then I'm a strong supporter of rent control, which is a huge driver of affordability in our district, whether it's Santa Monica, whether it's West Hollywood, but that is definitely a driver of affordability that I support in the district.
Okay, Ellen.
Local officials know best about how to build communities. They know where the jobs are, they know where the transit is, they know what the topography is. So to the greatest extent possible, local officials should be the ones who plan those communities. But when communities don't have an approved housing element, those communities need to be taken into account. And those leaders who aren't doing that need to be taken into account. So I don't support SB 79, especially since it doesn't have a provision excluding very high fire hazard severity zones, but I do support building up programs for low interest loans for building more affordable housing. I do support forcing municipalities to make their approval processes run more smoothly and more quickly. And I do support expanding the avenues for public-private partnerships to redevelop underutilized commercial and industrial spaces and make them into whole new neighborhoods planned by their local officials. Thank you.
Thanks. And John, finally, you can answer the question as framed, or if you want to respond to what you heard here.
Sure. So there are a number of tenant harassment and displacement protections already encompassed into state law that are already pretty good, that have taken into the significant amendments. Right now, the bill on the floor has 12 to 14 amendments. I can't remember what it is, but specifically, it's really zoned very specifically along high transit corridors. So let's talk Beverly Hills, along the D line, Wilshire, and La Cienega. And then they actually got a specific amendment. So cities under 35,000 people, if you're that, it's a quarter versus what it is before. There's no added on density bonus if you want to talk about that. There's a lot of misinformation going on about that. So it's really important you have people making sure we're saying the factual stuff about the bills. Specifically, local land use control is the nuts and bolts of every city council member and city official. I was a planning commissioner, I know this. You want to zone and you want to make sure you're building along commercial corridors, which is where we always tell people. That is what this bill is trying to do, but now we're saying not here. And so where are we building housing? How are we building housing? We have to do that some way before the state takes further control away from local cities.
Great, thank you guys. So moving on to the next question, a different type of housing. More than 1.5 million low-income renters in California pay more than half of their income on rent and utilities. This is a major driver of the homelessness crisis. Will you commit to additional renter assistance from the state? And what specific steps would you take to keep people housed before they lose their homes? And we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you are offering rental assistance to people in trouble, you're not just helping a tenant, you're helping a landlord. Most landlords are small mom and pop landlords, as people know. When somebody is on the verge of being displaced, losing their home, becoming homelessness, whatever it might be, as I said, I grew up literally in high school running from the landlord place to place. And there were no tenant protections back then, I'll tell you that much. But it's a win-win to be able to stand up for a lifeline for somebody that can meet a means test for a specific period of time, 6 months, 9 months, maybe 12 months, where you can help that person stay in a home, but you can also help that landlord continue to pay their mortgage, right? So it's a win-win for both sides, and we talked about this, I think, the last time we were up here, John, but I strongly support that as a tool that we should be using, absolutely.
Great, thanks. Shai. Whatever.
Absolutely, I support that as well. And, you know, I work with a huge patient population, many of whom are unhoused. And we need to, and at Santa Monica College, we have a huge, and community colleges across the state, there's a huge student population that's unhoused. And the solution is not living in cars in parking lots, which is what the state's solution has been. The solution is to get them into affordable housing so that they can live and start their lives and build their lives. And that should be the focus of stabilizing people, you know, wherever, no matter where they are in their lives, is to get them off the streets, get them into housing, and provide the safety net and support services to help them pick things back up with the support that they need.
Thanks. Ellen.
The role of government is to take care of people. And if people are falling into homelessness, the government is failing. So we need to keep that from happening. And how do we keep that from happening? Well, rent subsidies are one thing, but people need all kinds of help. People need mental health services. They need substance use disorder services. And I want to help increase the pathways to those jobs so that we can provide those to people. People need job training. I want to increase the opportunities for people to be in building trades apprenticeships. I want to make sure that people in this state are not falling into homelessness and to provide what they need to keep from falling into homelessness. Thank you.
Eric.
Appreciate this question a lot. One of the things that makes me so proud to be a Californian is our collective belief in the value of protecting our most vulnerable people. And certainly rent control is one aspect of that. But to expand on, I'll sort of say, this spectrum of making sure that there are tools for people to be successful, such as that rental support moving towards home ownership. So in addition to rental controls, making sure there's capital at low interest rate levels that are available to new homeowners is the goal and is the goal line. People with home ownership are embedded, invested in their communities. Communities transform when you have that ownership. So it's not only the rent control to help somebody in need in that acute moment, that acute event, but to help them on that pathway to work themselves towards the opportunity to live in the neighborhoods that they work. Thank you.
Thanks. Brian.
We have 70,000 homeless in LA County. LAUSD will tell you that 17,000 children at LA public schools are considered functionally homeless. We have failed. We have absolutely failed as a city, as a county, and as a state to effectively deal with this problem. I am for an all-new whole-of-government strategy to rethink the solution to this challenge. And on housing, I don't accept a lot of the premises of the status quo. Yes, I'm for greater rental assistance, but we also need to be building units a lot cheaper and faster. And with modern technology, we can do that. We need to be empowering people to train for the jobs of the future, not just the jobs of the past. We need to be supporting nonprofit organizations that are accountable and effective and on the ground, providing the wraparound services that people need to permanently get off the streets. But there is nothing at all progressive about letting a person, especially not a child, sleep on our streets. And we have to approach this problem with urgency and determination.
Thanks. Brittany.
I've been a renter my entire adult life, and as a civil rights advocate, I understand that most people, there are many people who are just one rent increase away from homelessness. We not only need to be providing rental assistance, we need to be expanding rent control. We also need to be making sure that we are cracking down on slumlords. We need to be making sure that we are also ensuring that renters have access to legal counsel when they're being taken advantage of by their landlords. And I would fight for legislation that protects our renters and also gives us path to home ownership.
Thanks. And finally, John.
I've been a renter my entire life. I can't afford to actually live in a market rate value apartment in the city of West Hollywood because we're not building enough. If it wasn't for rent control, the need to also expand rent control in every way, shape, and form, I wouldn't be able to live where I live right now and serve the people that I do. West Hollywood's 75% renters, and we need to continue to build more housing. But also, our rent control laws are under attack from people filing litigation and lawsuits. And there are currently only a very few number of cities left with rent control ordinances, and they are under attack. And it could go to the Supreme Court where we no longer have rent control. We need cities and legislators that exactly are fighting for this cause and expanding it. Tenant harassment protections, which I've authored, reestablishing and re-strengthening our RSOs in our cities, and first and foremost, providing free legal assistance and rent assistance. When I got elected during COVID, we were providing millions of dollars through the National Council of Jewish Women to ensure people stayed in their homes. It was going to the landlord and not the renter, and then we changed it because we heard from renters. Listen to renters, listen to the people who can't afford to where they're at, and you can create some really great solutions.
Thank you. Okay, next question. In 2014, Santa Monicans voted overwhelmingly to close the airport and convert the land into roughly 200-acre park. Some housing advocates now would like to include affordable housing in that redevelopment. Do you support housing on the airport land, or should it remain a park-only plan? Starting with Brittany.
I'm always going to be a proponent for more housing, but at the same time, I understand that locals understand these issues best. I believe that I would defer to locals here, but I do believe that if we can't afford to have affordable housing as well as a park, we should do that because we do need housing, that we are in a major housing and affordability crisis. And in these last two questions we just discussed, a major solution to that is building more homes.
Thanks. Eric?
Yes, thanks for the question, John. The voters' will was expressed in 2014, and accordingly, I think that they should continue to keep that as open space. There's an opportunity, of course, to petition, follow the democratic process, and give new voice, should there be an interest in overturning that particular vote.
Okay. Ellen?
So this is obviously completely up to the citizens of Santa Monica. It's up to them to decide. It's not up to me. I did try to figure out how much housing could be built on that land, and it's a lot. But I'm sure that the people of Santa Monica and your very pro-housing legislators are going to take that into consideration when they make their decision. But what I'll pledge as your state senator is that I'll work to help provide the funding that's going to be necessary for any site remediation, the funding that's going to be needed to build what you need to build. And that's my answer.
Thank you. Brian?
Santa Monica needs to build a lot of units. Everywhere in LA County needs to build a lot of units. I leave it up to the people of Santa Monica about how and where. If there were a vote and I lived in Santa Monica about including some affordable housing in this big park, I would vote yes, but ultimately it's a choice for the people of Santa Monica.
Thank you. Mike?
I think we can and should do both. What I would specifically allude to is, look, we got over 120 acres of land there. We can have beautiful park space that we can all be proud of. We can take existing buildings that are there, adaptively reuse them and turn them into housing and supplement that with some additional housing units and still have a really, really beautiful open space. That's also going to improve a lot of the very needed housing, obviously, in Santa Monica, but not so much that we're turning it into a situation where we're either compromising that parkland or we're creating such a traffic nightmare that we'd almost get the law of unintended consequences. So when I talk about this issue everywhere, I implore people to sort of think about walking and chewing gum, right? Everything in life doesn't have to be a binary choice. I think we can find something in the middle here that works for everybody, get ourselves some great housing, reuse some buildings we already have, and have a wonderful park for our next generation.
Thanks. John?
Yes, they should be building housing there. However, I never want to criticize my dear friends on the Santa Monica City Council because I know that they still have lots of options before them. It's a very unwritten rule when you're elected to start getting into someone else's home when you don't want to. But we do need to build housing. The state can provide a lot of grants and subsidies, and we have RENA numbers we have to meet. And at a certain point, if we don't want the state to take away further local control, we're going to be seeing the RENA allocations get even higher as a result. So we need to do all that we can to build housing before the 2030 cycle, because if you thought the numbers were high now, West Hollywood's around 3,900 and some odd units that we have to build. No, we're on track to do that. We have to increase that amount so all cities can continue to have some local control over what they're doing, but also build housing at the same time. And I know our friends in Santa Monica will take care of that.
Okay, thanks. And finally, Shai.
Thank you. As somebody who has lived in Ocean Park, and I heard cries from my son overnight along with jets during the day, and so it's never silent. I'm really looking forward to the airport shutting down. And I'm focused on that and then building a great park. And this is personal to me as somebody who's lived in that neighborhood, and building a great park and supporting a great park and stewarding state resources to help build that great park. We are going to have increased housing density in Santa Monica, and I fully support that, but we also need more parks. We don't have enough park spaces anywhere in the district, and statistics weigh that out in terms of park space per acreage. And we need more park space. That's pro-family. That's pro-environment. We'll bring down air pollution. We'll bring down temperatures. And I really am looking forward to a great park here in Santa Monica.
Okay, thank you. And now our next question comes from Santa Monica College board member Luis Castañon, friend of the club. California is expanding early childhood education, including universal transitional kindergarten, funded through Prop 98. How will you ensure that this expansion does not come at the expense of California's community colleges? And we'll start again with Shai.
Thank you. California community colleges, the state budget is terrible, for a lot of industries, but it's, community colleges, the Cal States, we're getting gutted, and it's not us, it's all of the students that these institutions serve. These institutions serve more students and more California families than UC does. And so when I go up there, I want to be on the education committee, and my focus will be to bring more funding and support to community colleges and Cal States, because there's not enough people up there in Sacramento who prioritize these institutions that are so fundamental to helping Californians and California families.
Thanks. We'll go to Ellen next.
The funding metric for community colleges is crazy. They really don't get nearly enough money, and they're the on-ramp to the middle class for a vast number of people who are working at the same time, people who are older, people who can't afford to go into other systems. And we need to make sure that that is strong. The role of government is to take care of people, and building the on-ramp to the middle class and not scrimping on education is a long-term solution that we need to buy into completely, because we deserve it. We deserve to have the best educational system at all levels in the country, in the state of California.
Thanks. Brian.
Thanks. When Governor Pat Brown in the 60s created the modern California university system, the UCs, the Cal States, and the California community colleges, that system got a far greater percentage of the state budget than it does today. We have to, as we make hard choices in this difficult budget environment, prioritize the future of our state, not the past of our state. For every dollar you spend on early childhood education, you get back $4 or $5 in greater economic activity. I would fight vociferously in Sacramento for investing from age 3 through high school, through college, that ought to be a priority of the state, because that ensures our vitality, our economic growth for the future.
Thank you. Brittany.
I think that education, especially in our community colleges, has been underfunded for quite some time, even before Trump's attacks and cuts to education. We need to make sure that we are continuing to engage in litigation with Trump, bringing him to court when he attacks education, and making sure that we are getting that money back to put back towards education, and making sure that our community colleges are well funded and supported. I know that my family would not be where it is, and I would not be where I am had my mom not had the opportunity to graduate from LACC and get us to where we are today. So I think we need to continue to make sure that our teachers are well paid, that we can get more teachers into the education system, and that we are supporting legislation that funds education, funds it properly, as we are not paying enough per pupil as we should be.
Thanks. Eric.
I really appreciate this question. I've been on both ends of this. Taught community college, El Camino College, American government, California government courses for several years. And of course, as a school board member currently, I believe emphatically in the idea of universal TK, and certainly all the data and research suggests the importance of that important starting line for all the people across Los Angeles County and across California, frankly. So yes, we're in budget deficit. There's some major headwinds. We're going to have to make really hard decisions. However, this is an area where I think we have to continue to prioritize and make sure that the next generation, my 4 children, and the kids coming up the pipeline have an opportunity to excel, and also that there's an opportunity for that throughput from that TK experience all the way through all the way through community college experience, so they can make sure that they get the skills needed to be successful in life. Thank you.
Thanks. Mike.
We literally can't live without community colleges, as expensive as 4 years have become. How many people here know somebody who went to Santa Monica College, went to a 4-year college after that? Right. I grew up inland by Mount Sac. Literally, like half the people in my senior class in high school went to Mount Sac, went on to 4-year universities. It's the lifeblood of what's happened in our communities and country for a long time, and now it's more important than ever. What I'll tell you it's also important too is because community college actually have trade classes in them, the kind of stuff we used to have in high school. I said earlier that I worked myself through college as a carpenter. Why? Well, my grandpa got me started, but I was a shop kid in junior high and high school. My high school doesn't even have shop anymore. It doesn't have auto shop, it doesn't have home ec, it's got nothing. For a lot of people that want to go into a trade, that want to have a good union job, that don't want to go to a 4-year college, you're not getting that kind of schooling in high school anymore, but you can get it at community college. So we've got to make this a main priority. It'll certainly be one of my priorities in Sacramento.
Thanks, John.
Did you have Future Farmers of America too? No, sorry. I did. I'm from Wisconsin. Anyways, it's a very powerful club if you ever go to Ripon, Wisconsin, which if you do, let me know. We are not funding public education. We need to make sure teachers are not going out there and buying their own supplies, and students are not signing up for 2-year degrees knowing it's going to be 3. The student debt problem is out of control. I have student debt. So many of us do, and the clips and the interest that we're being paid at with the affordability crisis is insane. We need to make sure that we are enforcing when these things are passed, that they are actually mandated. We're seeing that right now with arts education and LAUSD, if you're following that lawsuit, and arts education being systematically unfunded. Arts, pre-K, TK, all of that have the opportunity to change people's lives. And in Sacramento, I will make sure we're not only fully funding public education, but we need to start making sure billionaire and millionaire companies are paying their fair share. They are not. We are putting it on the backs of workers and people who can barely afford rent. We really need to make sure that when we're putting out there and saying billionaires are not paying their fair share, how can we make sure that we're making up our deficits in our budget? And that's a surefire way to make sure we do so.
Okay, thanks. And now let's go to the next question, turning to our conflicts with the federal government.
What
conflict? On Monday, the Supreme Court allowed ICE to interrogate and investigate anyone based on race or language profiling. This will impact all of us, including Santa Monicans and people in this room. What additional protections can California provide to protect all of us from facing abduction or detention from ICE? We'll start with Mike.
Let's just be honest about this, okay? Whether you think it's morally reprehensible what's happening right now, and I do, or whether you're just looking at economics, what we're doing right now with ICE and what's happening is complete suicide both ways. If you take on average an undocumented worker in California, on average they pay $6,700 more a year in revenue to the government than they take in services. It's one thing to say our borders should be tight and that if you're committing crimes and undocumented, you should be deported. I think most people in this room agree with that. But when you are undocumented, when you are the lifeblood of this state, does anybody really want to snap their fingers and all undocumented workers are gone? Donald Trump doesn't even want to do that because we'd all starve, right? No house, none of this housing we're talking about, none of the buildings people work at would ever be built again, and our service industry would be decimated. So let's start being honest about it, and let's start defending people that are the lifeblood of our community and are the lifeblood of our economics, because to not do so is not only morally reprehensible, but it's economic suicide.
Thanks, Shai.
You know, as somebody who comes from local leadership, you know, I will be focused on serving my constituents, including many undocumented, you know, people who live in our district. And it's not about simply the rhetoric. I think there's enough Democrats and politicians up there that are out there in terms of rhetoric, but it's about really protecting these people. It's about working with our local schools. It's about working with our colleges, with our hospitals, protecting the data, protecting people, protecting the information, working with our police force. And so it's not simply about going out and having a press conference. I do think that we have enough politicians who do that. And that is important. There is a role for that, but we don't have enough people who concentrate on the local goals, constituency services, and really accomplishing the things that make a difference for people in this chaotic time in their everyday lives and really actually protect them.
Thanks. Brittany.
As president of the Human Relations Commission, I've been on in the trenches on this issue. When ICE came to Los Angeles, I was working with CHIRLA and other community-based organizations to make sure that immigrants and our Latino community had what they needed while they were literally hiding for their lives. I stood on Capitol Hill in D.C. and lobbied with asylum seekers and refugees against the use of torturous ICE boxes. I'm wearing my immigration pin today supporting Latino communities because this issue is deeply important to me. And I believe that what the Supreme Court decided, allowing racial profiling anywhere, is absolutely reprehensible. As a black woman with two black brothers growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, I know what it feels like to be stopped in front of your home based on the color of your skin. It's something that we could not stand for, and as a civil rights advocate and as your state senator, I would continue to fight against.
Thank you. Ellen.
We're in a dark, dark place in our history. It's really deeply upsetting. Immigrants, as John said, are being taken off the street, shipped off to other countries with terrible conditions, and the Supreme Court isn't going to save us. Only we're going to save us. We're a nation of immigrants. What's happening is against everything we stand for. When my people came, all they had to do was take the boat and get checked at Ellis Island. That's very similar to what people who are undocumented have done in this country. They come looking for a better life, looking for work, and we need to protect them. And that's why I'm grateful for Al Muratsuchi's bill that's going to help protect children in schools. That's why I'm grateful for legal services for immigrants that we have. And we can expand. ICE can only come into public spaces. We can expand the private places that people have to go. For example, if kids are vulnerable and are taking the public bus to school, we can provide school buses, and that makes it a private place, a place ICE can't go. Thank you.
Great. Brian.
You know, we're in uncharted territory, as everyone has said. Something like this has not happened before, and we have to recognize that we're living in a new reality and rethink our cooperation with the federal government from top to bottom. And that includes cooperation with ICE. Normally, I would say I'd be comfortable working with ICE on the deportation of violent offenders. I'm not sure I'm comfortable working with ICE on anything right now. I think that we have got to look at a consortium of states that are actually going to follow the rule of law like we have as Trump has gutted the CDC, like we have as Trump has gutted laws around environmental protection and climate action. I think, number one, we've got to look at our whole relationship with Washington. Number two, we've got to significantly ramp up the legal protections that we're providing to folks in our state, not just public defenders, but also look at public-private partnerships. Call on law firms, call on the private sector. These are their customers. They should be taking care of all Californians, not just U.S. citizen Californians. They should step up as well.
Okay, thanks. John.
What happened is a travesty, and it will go down as one of the worst decisions the Supreme Court's ever made. Specifically, the city of West Hollywood was filed an amicus brief, but we were party to the lawsuit when it was going through with Santa Monica and Culver City, and continuing on and seeing what that happened, because when people came on July 4th to a car wash and arrested people in West Hollywood, it was the most atrocious thing I've heard. And when we look at what we're trying to do, we are seeing, and especially in my day job, where I'm the chief of staff at a Latino advocacy organization, kids not wanting to go to school. That means it impacts school enrollment, which impacts school funding. We are seeing parents not going to work, which impacts our local economy. And we are seeing people be dreading going outside. We have seen this before. It was in the Holocaust, when people are being said to show their papers. People are being asked to literally, for their own safety now, show their papers to make sure that they can legally be there. We need to do all that we can, file every lawsuit we can, and fight like hell to make sure that no one in our community, when they walk out their door, fears if they're ever going to see their children again.
Finally, Eric.
This issue hits very personal for me. I grew up in Central Washington, working alongside many immigrants, and knowing their stories, believing in their desire to do something more with themselves and for their families and for the next generation of their family. That is the American story. That is ultimately who we are as a people. To the question of what we can do, government can't solve all the problems. There's 3 steps that I think need to happen. One is government can be a catalyst to those local communities, and I've heard wonderful stories that have come out as a result of all this unfortunate and awful approach from the federal government, and that communities have come together, churches, nonprofits, etc., making sure that those immigrant families that are concerned about leaving their homes have resources that they need. That work needs to continue, and I think government officials can be leaders and catalysts in that. Of course, in addition to that, the legislator locally can play a significant role in identifying opportunities, like the Assembly Member Mirasucci's bill notifying parents when ICE comes on to a school property. There's other steps to ensure that they feel safe, the immigrant community feels safe when they're in a public space. And finally, thank you, advocacy.
Okay. Okay, quick hand raise question, then we'll follow up. Does everybody here support Prop 50? Okay, great. Yeah, we'll be voting on it next week. So with the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom is showing how he will fight the authoritarian national threat, throwing out the old rule book of politics to confront our reality. What tools would you use as a state senator to actually stand up to the fascist government? How would you specifically lead in your policy making, but also with the bully pulpit of the office? And we start with Mike.
Yeah, look, it's 3 words: sue, sue, and sue. There's really no other way to do it unless you want to have a violent insurrection, and I don't, and I hope nobody else in this room does. What's happening in this country in terms of violence and resorting to violence, and even what we saw today with Charlie Kirk, who I probably don't agree with, we probably had nothing in common, but it's completely unacceptable. What we need to do is we need to simply say, look, we are a beacon for California values, not just for our own state, but for this country. This country is looking to California right now. We've got a good attorney general. We've got a governor who's pretty dedicated to this, and I assume our next governor will be as well, and I assume anybody who's up here becomes senator will be dedicated to this also. I'm a litigator. I've been suing people and defending lawsuits for 25 years. I would absolutely use my position as a senator to be in the Attorney General's office literally every day, strategizing on how to legally fight everything that is coming down and trying to destroy our California values. It's what we have to do. We got to sue, sue, sue. And if you look at the lawsuits that have happened in response to the federal government, 85% of the time we're winning, right? Keep it up.
Eric?
Can you repeat the question again? Make sure I get
Yeah,
the full-
sure. How would you use your bully pulpit and the policy making of the office to fight the federal government overreach?
Yeah, this is obviously an immensely important existential question now, and it's certainly challenging and straining our federal system. I think in addition to legal remedies, there's public policy remedies. Changing the hearts and minds of those affected, not just in California, but across this nation, is incumbent upon us. I think we have a unique opportunity because California has all the resources, human capital, physical resources it needs to be successful, but other states don't. I think if we demonstrate with our example the way we function as a society with a broad safety net, the protection of our own people, and we can start to tell that story across this nation, we'll start to turn the hearts and minds of those others who can start to apply pressure to those legislators. It will begin to escalate, especially as they lose their health care. They lose access to education. They lose all of those tools that have allowed them to have a step forward. That's to me a role that we can play internally within California and externally out to our colleagues across the states.
Thanks. Shai?
Look, I think as Democrats, we've lost way too many working people across the country. You know, in 2016, you could say that Trump won because we lost white working people in the middle of the country. In 2024, Trump won with a broader coalition with working people, including from communities of color. And I don't think that the majority of people that voted for Trump voted for this chaos, for this aggression. They voted for Trump because they just didn't believe in us finding solutions to their problems. And I will concentrate up there in terms of my bully pulpit. It is to stand with working people who live in my district and make sure that they know that I'm sticking up for them. Work on affordability, work on protecting them, work on the issues that are meaningful to them. And that's what I think we have to do district by district because we have to win elections.
Got it. Thanks. Brittany?
Yes, as a civil rights advocate, president of the Human Relations Commission, I've been in the trenches standing up against Trump. When they told us we could no longer use DEI, I had many people come up to me and say, well, what is the Human Relations Commission going to do about DEI? Well, we were doing DEI work before it was called DEI, and if he wants to take the words away, we're just going to move smarter and keep doing the work that we need to do to serve the communities that need it most. When he came against the LGBTQIA+ community, we made LGBTQIA+ advocacy one of our number one aspects of our strategic plan, and we worked with the Transgender Advisory Council to make sure that that community was protected. And as a state senator, I would continue not only to use my skills as an attorney to litigate and get and protect the funds that we need, but to also make sure that we are fighting for policies that promote our values and protect our most vulnerable communities.
Thank you. Brian?
Thanks again, John. Donald Trump changed my life twice. I was a journalist. I was of the old school. I believed in being tough but fair to both sides. I believed that people shouldn't know my politics. I was Katie Couric's political producer. I worked at places like The Atlantic and Yahoo. And then Trump became president the first time. And I know we're like perversely nostalgic for the first term now because it seems a lot better, but it seemed pretty horrific at the time, and that's when I left from covering politics to trying to change politics as an advisor to Democrats. And it was Trump's election last November that motivated me to, do this crazy thing, running for office. I think all of these answers have been very smart, legislation, litigation, advocacy. But I also think, as Shai said, we've got to create a model that's attractive to people. If we were living in a functional economic or political system, somebody like Donald Trump would not be possible. We cannot go through another national election where people say, oh, well, if you vote for the Democrats, America's going to be more like California. Actually, we should say, if you vote for the Republicans, America won't be like California.
Thank you. Ellen?
So I know it's cliche, but the best defense is a good offense. And I think our offense, sure, it involves litigation, but the courts are not going to save us. I think we've seen that very starkly this week. We need to partner with other states to do things the federal government would do, like the vaccine program that states are working on together now. We need to do what Shai said and win back the voters by governing well. That's it.
Great. Okay. And John.
When my niece looked at me December of 2016 and said, "Where did the nice lady on the television go?" It was after the November 2016 election. And I looked at her and I couldn't believe that she remembered what was actually going on. I vowed that day to run for office and fight like hell for my community. And ever since then, we have been working to make sure we're fighting for our LGBTQ community, our people of color of all ages. And what we're also trying to look for is making sure that we're protecting California, but by protecting the nation. We are on track to actually lose more electoral seats, even with Prop 50 passing. So we need to do all that we can to make sure we're bringing more people into California than are leaving at the current moment. I've pledged to hold town halls in every city and community. Happy to do one in Santa Monica Democratic Club when I'm elected, to make sure we're setting priorities. And you know you have a senator working for you when I'm up in Sacramento within my first 100 days. Because without your voices, I can't be an effective bully pulpit. And I want to make sure when I'm up there vocalizing and saying what my district needs, it's your voices that help shape that.
Okay, thank you. So the next question. Trump has taken a sledgehammer to healthcare, targeting funding for Medicaid, reproductive health, and care that the LGBTQ plus community relies upon. Meanwhile, RFK Jr. has run roughshod over public healthcare agencies and medical research. What can be done at the state level to maintain and improve access to life-saving medical care? And we'll start with Brian.
We're not going to be able to fully fill in the gap of the federal government pulling back, of Donald Trump declaring war on California. 1 out of 3 Californians is on Medi-Cal. A majority of our school children rely on Medi-Cal. We're already facing a big budget challenge. So we've got to do everything possible within our means to make sure that we're growing revenue in the state and rethinking other spending to prioritize, as I said, the future, which is education and healthcare. With respect to RFK's crazy decisions, blowing up one of the jewels of America, the CDC, blowing up cancer research at NIH, we've got to do as much as possible with other like-minded states to form a consortium in partnership with our universities to protect and promote that research. We have a childhood healthcare crisis. RFK is right that is a problem. His solution is a joke, it's non-scientific, and it's, in fact, exactly the wrong direction. I would champion science-based solutions to make sure that our kids are getting healthier.
Thank you. Mike.
Look, when I read about the 998 line being gutted by the federal government so that you didn't have counselors, somebody calls in needing suicide help, LGBTQ person, and those folks were being removed from the 998 line. My father committed suicide, as some of you know, and talk about a gut punch, right? We've gone so far as to turn the political into the healthcare, right? And the only way we're going to get around this is independence. We need energy independence. We need healthcare independence. We need to make sure that universal healthcare and healthcare for all happens in this state. We operate independently. We don't rely on anybody else. And that's the only way we're going to fix this. I'm not talking single payer. We've had this discussion before. I'm not a fan of single payer because it eliminates private policies. I am a fan of universal healthcare because we can combine the two to make sure everybody has that basic human right.
Thank you. Ellen.
Healthcare is a human right. And I think it's pretty clear that providing health care is often less expensive in the long run than not providing health care. So I would advocate for eliminating some of the inefficiencies in the state government, which, believe it or not, do exist, and using that money for other things such as health care. And not only our health care, we need to be a sanctuary for people who can't get the care they need other places. People who are having miscarriages who can't be properly treated in their hometowns actually fly to California to get the proper care they need. We need to be providing gender-affirming care, or at least be a sanctuary for gender-affirming care for people who can no longer get that where they live. Healthcare is a human right, and we need to provide it. That's the role of the government.
Thanks, Ellen. Eric.
Thank you for the question. As a chief operating officer for a public health-focused organization that serves the most vulnerable populations across a few states, this is a near and dear important issue to me. I spent 18 years as a healthcare executive, some of the larger health systems locally as well. There's an opportunity for improved efficiency in the dollars that are being spent. It's $90+ billion that are dedicated towards healthcare in the state of California. There's bright spots occurring right now with programs like enhanced care management, where there's attempts to combine clinical need with social and mental support as well. So there is opportunity to make sure that every dollar that we're spending in healthcare is spent as efficiently and effectively as possible. In addition to that, because of these cuts, I think there's going to be a short-term opportunity to continue to ensure that there's a proper safety net in place for all of our people in California as we work towards that better long-term solution. Preventative care is much, much cheaper than acute care.
Thanks. John?
As the former vice president of Planned Parenthood Los Angeles, fully funding community-based health centers as well as Planned Parenthood Health Centers stops and helps prevent a lot of issues that happen in the long run. Additionally, this issue is deeply personal to me. As someone who is gay, the attacks on PrEP and PEP medication are things that we are seeing going up to the Supreme Court, but will be under attack. We have what is probably before us a public health emergency that is coming. I know Shai is a doctor. I could talk about it ad nauseum. And the reason is because we haven't even begun to see the layoffs at these hospitals yet as a result of these cuts. That's going to impact workers. That's going to impact service times. That's going to impact how you get care and how sick you remain while you're waiting to do it. We need to make sure we're funding people from the bottom all the way up to the top, because if we're not basing that care right down there at the basic level for preventative services, we're not doing our job. And I intend to use this office to fight for fixes at the statewide and the policy levels, but also making sure we're helping with funding mechanisms to help make sure workers and other community clinics are fully funded and don't have to rely on federal government subsidies that are already been cut and gutted. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Shai.
How much time you got? This is simply the reason that I'm running. The reason that I'm making this commitment is to be a leader up there on healthcare. And, I appreciate everything that everybody said. And budgets are about values, and I'm going to push to make sure that Medi-Cal is well supported in the state and that we craft a healthcare system over the next decade that is sustainable and works for all Californians. And the key is that it's not just socially just to help all of our vulnerable communities, but it's fiscally responsible, and that's the case we have to make. Medi-Cal cuts don't just affect Medi-Cal recipients. It drives up the cost on the taxpayer because all of a sudden outpatient care that folks are getting are going to inpatient care, and it affects everybody who goes to the emergency room at places like my hospital. They will no longer be waiting hours, they'll be waiting days like they were before the Affordable Care Act. And so that's the case we have to go out to make to the public to value healthcare.
Brittany.
Yes, healthcare is a human right. No one should be worried about how to afford their healthcare or where their healthcare is coming from. As a civil rights advocate, I would champion legislation that made sure that healthcare is accessible to everyone. I would also ensure that we are looking at other revenues, such as closing the Water's Edge loophole, the largest corporate subsidy that we give, to ensure that we can bring more revenue into California to support Medi-Cal. I would also legislate healthcare from an equity standpoint. The racial disparities and injustice that takes place in the healthcare system need to be resolved. My grandfather, the first Black director of the Community Redevelopment Agency here in Los Angeles, died at 38 years old due to racial injustice in the healthcare system. This is an issue deeply personal to me, and I would make sure to champion this issue in the state legislature.
Okay, thanks. Next question. The Trump administration is using the guise of Jewish safety to advance authoritarian policies like pulling funding from universities, enacting the travel ban, and deporting Palestinian protesters. Assemblymember Rick Zabur is authoring a bill that he believes will fight anti-Semitism in our education system. How would you fight anti-Semitism in California? We'll start with Eric.
Thank you. This is a very real example for me as a school board member, and during my election, there's within my own community concerns within the Muslim community as well as the Jewish community, and I spent great effort talking to both. There was some incidents that happened at a school, so there's real opportunity for us to repair where there's been severed relationships and make sure that everyone feels collectively supported. As it pertains specifically to anti-Semitism, I've come to appreciate in conversations with many of my friends in the Jewish community the unique aspects of how it can reveal itself, and I do think there's opportunity, as we've done in my own school district, to ensure that there's education for our teachers and that there's a clear education path for the students to understand it at a deeper level, so we can make sure that our school environment is collectively supportive for all people of all faiths. Thank you.
Brian.
So as I said earlier, we have to take on the culture of hate and division. And that includes anti-Semitism, which is something very personal to me. Anti-Semitic hate crimes have gone up over 200% over the last decade. Regardless of your views on Gaza or Bibi Netanyahu, Jewish students, Jewish citizens in California should feel safe. And that's why I'm a huge champion of AB 715. I was, in fact, working the phones a few hours ago to try to get this passed because it is critical to protecting Jewish students. But this isn't just about Jews in our state. We saw the rise of Asian hate during COVID, starting in 2020. It never really went away. You need someone who's going to champion that cause. We need to champion anti-racism. We also need to champion, as has been said, what Latino families are going through right now, because hate against one is an attack on all, and we need a war against hate in our state.
Thank you. Shai.
You know, I think that the senator from this district has a job to stand up against anti-Semitism, in particular because there's a huge Jewish American contingent in the district. And it's objective statistics that throughout the country, and including in LA, the amount of anti-Semitic incidents has gone up astronomically over the last decade and even more in the last couple of years. And so it's really important to stand up again for the constituents that you serve as the state senator. So when there are hate crimes, whether it's hate crimes, ICE versus Latino and our brown brothers and sisters, or whether it's against Jewish folks or API hate, anti-Muslim hate, again, it's very important to stick up for it, but it is important for the senator from this district to really be a leader on anti-Semitism. I'm proud of how our school at Santa Monica College has, not perfectly, but has attempted to handle these incidents, allowing students to have their voices heard in the safest possible manner so that everybody is heard. We didn't do it perfectly, but we enforced our rules and we were able to keep students safe for the most part.
Thank you. Mike?
I got married 24 years ago by a priest and a rabbi. My wife is Jewish, both of my sons are Jewish, and the issue, as it is for a lot of people up here, hits very, very close to home. It's a very real issue. I absolutely support Assemblyman Zabur's efforts, obviously, efforts that are also shared by Assemblymember Lowenthal. Josh Lowenthal is an endorser of mine. Rick Zabur is an associate member of the Jewish caucus, as being related to somebody who's Jewish, and one of the first things I will do when I get into the Senate is to join the Jewish caucus as an associate member. It's a very, very serious issue, and it goes hand in hand with these other serious issues, whether it's anti-Asian hate, whether it's anti-Black, whether it's anti-LGBTQ, Latino. We're seeing offenses against women that we haven't seen in a long time. We're just in this very toxic politic right now. And I think whoever's in this office next, and I think we all agree, we're just going to have to laser focus on that because we just have to get rid this toxicity that's in our politics right now. And a lot of that does start with anti-Semitism.
Thank you. Brittany.
Yes, especially under this administration, we need someone in the Senate seat who has experience fighting against hate and anti-Semitism. And as a civil rights advocate, as president of the Human Relations Commission under LA Civil Rights, this is the work that I have been doing over the past few years, particularly with anti-Semitism after October 7th. I felt the impact of that here in Los Angeles, sitting down with religious leaders on both sides and trying to figure out how we navigate this increase in hate crimes, but not only after that, but also when hate came against the AAPI community, the LGBTQ plus community, the Black community, the Latino community. This is the work that I do, and I would continue to champion this work in the state legislature.
Thank you. Ellen.
The Trump administration using anti-Semitism to promote fascism and all the other things he's promoting with it makes me sick. Just makes me completely ill. As a Jew myself, and as the mother of two young adults who were living on college campuses last year, who experienced anti-Jewish hate, it's a huge problem, and it's not a problem that I grew up with, which is really strange. And I think we've gotten to a place in our society where a lot of people don't want to understand other people's perspectives and values and beliefs. And the way we counter that, I think, is by education, not just teaching people about other people, about the Holocaust, about how tiny the Jewish population is, but by teaching people how to be curious about other people. And I think that's what I'm going to stand for when I join the Jewish caucus in the Senate.
Thank you. John.
I was the victim of a hate crime in college for being gay. So I know exactly what it's like to be targeted. We need someone that's going to stand up and make sure they say, this isn't going to happen on my watch. We need cities to fund their Jewish safety plans. In the city of West Hollywood, we have a Jewish safety plan that we fully fund, but more cities need to adopt these types of policies. And I believe we can work as a state legislature to help promote that type of advocacy. Specifically as well, we need to make sure our students and people that are afraid to talk or learn about issues aren't getting it from their phones or TikTok or social media or some of these toxic rhetoric sites that we've been talking about, and have the ability to have really serious conversations in an educational environment with trained professionals and people who really understand this issue. The city of West Hollywood supported Rick Zabur's bill many, many months ago. I made sure that happened, and specifically, we need to make sure, and especially as the former president of the ACLU of Southern California, that when someone is engaging in protected speech, that they know that they're engaging in an educated way, and knowing that there won't be that type of action against them for asking a question. Kids are afraid to ask questions. People are afraid to ask questions. We need to get back into a dialogue versus an us versus them.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to ask a couple questions about climate now. First one is from the California Democratic Party Environmental Caucus Chair, R.L. Miller, another friend of the club. California's clean energy comes from both large-scale union-built solar plants and also rooftop solar systems. Recent Public Utility Commission rules have made rooftop solar less cost efficient, sparking criticism from environmentalists, but support from some economists. Given that no fix has passed in recent sessions, where do you stand, and what kind of bill would you introduce to accelerate our clean energy transition? And we'll start with John.
Oh, great. Finally get to go first. There you go. As a local elected official, we have in West Hollywood a really aggressive green energy initiative that includes rooftop solar. We don't see it on any of our multi-family or multi-story things because it's too expensive. And so as a statewide policy fix, we need to make sure that we're bringing that cost down. Single-family homeowners, corporations, multi-family housing units need to make sure that they could have this as an option. Additionally, when we're looking at utilizing solar, here. We need to make sure that we're engaging it based on sound climate policy. And as we know right now, things are being attacked by the Trump administration that even mentions the word climate change. And so when we're looking at our policies at the state, we need to be aggressive and unapologetic in making sure we're meeting our green energy goals, because if we don't do something 10 years ago, we're not going to be doing anything because we have to play catch up for quite some time right now.
Thank you. Shai.
Look, we lost our home in the Palisades fire. We were the direct victims of the effects of climate change, and it's a critical thing, critical issue in the district. And one of the things that I will concentrate on is making these measures affordable for Californians. So just like I will go up there to make sure that fire-safe rebuilding is affordable for Californians, and even beyond the building code, I will continue to advocate for clean energy like solar to be affordable for California residents and businesses to utilize that. And so that will be something that I concentrate on, is affordability of these measures.
Thanks. Brian.
So I looked into putting rooftop solar on my house, and it was burdensome, it was expensive, it was really bureaucratic, I had to get multiple permits. This is crazy. We've got to make it as easy and affordable as possible for people to actually add energy to the grid. We need new energy. Solar is the cheapest form of energy in California. We ought to be championing people and businesses and institutions that want to put solar everywhere, and we ought to have an effort in Sacramento to make it as cheap and affordable as possible. As we're thinking about the future of our state, planning for the future, we've got to go all in on clean, green, affordable energy. And there is this false choice between affordability and meeting our climate goals. In fact, I think that meeting our climate goals can be done in a way that lowers the cost of power and electricity for people, and that's what I would champion.
Thank you. Ellen.
Okay, if you remember only one thing you heard here tonight, I want it to be this. We are not even remotely prepared for what energy demand is going to be. We're not even remotely prepared for what energy demand is going to be. And this is why we need to go hurtling towards our clean, green, fire-safe energy future. Also, did you know that California has the 11th least reliable grid of any state? We need to invest in grid modernization, in capacity building, in battery storage to the greatest extent possible, because it's going to pay dividends. It's going to pay dividends in affordability, in environmental protection. It's where we must go. And it will also create great jobs that can't go overseas or be taken over by AI, which is what's going to cause the need for the energy.
Thank you. Eric?
I had the pleasure of being the City of El Segundo's first chair of its environmental committee about 18 years ago. That city, of course, has a high density of large businesses. It was at the forefront of green building standards, and I think they did a lot of great things that other cities have since emulated, but can be a catalyst to ensure that businesses have some incentive to adopt really friendly and green policies, including solar. And I'll add in another story, which is, for those of you who've heard about the landslide in Palos Verdes Peninsula, that was something I dealt with very directly, and some of those homeowners immediately lost their utilities, to Ellen's point, and had to consider solar. So I've heard their stories. In fact, I was with a couple of them the other night. It is prohibitive in its cost. We need to make it easier to obtain and more accessible. We need to support cities in their implementation and deployment as well. And we need to reduce our reliance on outside utilities, particularly electrical utilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany?
Yes. Everyone deserves access to clean air, clean power and clean water, and we need to make sure that this clean power is affordable. One of the ways that we can do that, and something that Senator Ben Allen co-authored and legislation that I would certainly champion and support, is the Polluters Superfund Act. We need to make sure that these oil companies and these polluters are helping us pay for the cost of climate change, and that burden does not fall upon underserved communities, upon taxpayers, upon communities of color that are already facing the most impact and devastation of climate change. And that is the kind of equitable legislation that I would support.
Thanks. And Mike?
Look, as a lot of you might know, I've been an environmental attorney for 25 years. My law degree and undergraduate degrees are in environmental science and environmental law. And look, I'll give you a personal anecdote like you can tell I like to do, which is 15 years ago when we rebuilt our home in Venice, we put solar panels over the entire house. We've never had a bill since, and it was $11,000 in a prepaid lease. Had great promotions back then. I still remodel houses on the side using my carpenter background and what have you, and I just did one out in Joshua Tree. It was almost $60,000 to cover the roof, and there are no lease plans anymore. It's like they're trying to make it so we can't do it. It has to change. It has to change tomorrow. And this is big business. California should be the leader in not only getting energy from renewables, but to producing them. We also have to look at wind. One of the biggest reasons why, IBW Local 47 has endorsed me is because that infrastructure for wind, that infrastructure for solar, the conduit that we need to bring that forth is something that's going to keep people employed for the next generation. And it's really important that we stop messing around with this stuff and realize this is the future, it's here, we should be a leader in it, and the fact that it costs me $60,000 now to do solar, and it was $11,000 then, something's wrong.
Thank you. In January, the Palisades fire devastated the northern part of this district. As wildfires intensify, what policies would you author or support for the state to strengthen both prevention and disaster response? And we'll start with Eric.
Thank you for the question, John. This is obviously a very important question. Significant investments need to be made. There's been a start, and obviously there's been a lot of this legislation even in recent days as it pertains to fire recovery and response. That investment needs to be sustained, particularly as it relates to brush clearance, the investment of technologies, the deployment of more resources to our fire departments. Whether it's staff or new resources as well. There's a lot of tools that need to be put in place to assist in the management of these open spaces. I had the fortune as the mayor of Rancho Palos Verdes to work directly with our land conservancy and had a great partnership. I'd love to see some of those coordination efforts translate in those more complex areas. Thank you.
Okay, John.
We need to make sure the state, the county, and local cities are dealing everything to do with brush clearance and fully funding that. We also need to make sure our firefighters and our first responders are getting not only their pension benefits fully funded, but also cancer prevention screenings as they're being cut, because they're going into really unsafe situations. We need to make sure they're fully funded and make sure local cities are investing in public safety. In West Hollywood, as mayor, we took that surplus and we're building a brand new fire station. And that's because you can never go wrong investing in public safety, because as we saw in West Hollywood, a fire can happen just like that at Runyon Canyon, 3 blocks from my house. And let me tell you, I'm glad we had 4 fire stations within our 1.9 square miles to attack it, while our friends and family members and community members in the Palisades had everyone else helping battle and make sure that they could get all the services they did. We need to invest in robust infrastructure improvements as well to make sure that we don't see cars riddled about the roads and people not able to get through emergency access. And we also need to ensure that when we're looking at rebuild, what fire preventative materials homeowners can do at a cheap rate, if not free, because they deserve to rebuild their homes at the same levels and make sure that they can get back to business of living in their homes where they've been for 30 years.
Thanks. Shai?
Thank you, and obviously this is personal for me. After our family lost our home in January, it was a big upheaval, and it is one of the reasons that I'm running. It's to bring our community's voice up to Sacramento in terms of the, not just the people who lost their homes like we did, but also the fire-threatened communities that are in high-risk fire zones, including here in Santa Monica. And so, brush clearance, fire mitigation, and anything we can do to bring down the risk of fire is critically important, but also insurance stabilization. So we need to make sure that from a state standpoint that there is insurance access for the people and the businesses and the schools in those communities so that places like Malibu and Palisades don't just become billionaires, that the same middle-class families that have lived there in the past can still continue to live there because there's more economic diversity there than people think.
Thanks. Mike?
Yeah, look, it's common sense. I mean, our police departments, our fire departments, our first responders are so badly underfunded, whether it's in municipalities or whether it's statewide. How do you expect somebody to do their job? How do you expect somebody to save your home or your building or your family when they don't have the proper equipment, the proper funding, and quite frankly, the proper infrastructure to whether it's their pension or their retirement or their benefits package to actually encourage people to go into the fire academy, to go into police academies, to become a first responder. So that's part of it. Number two is, look, let's get into the 21st century, right? Let's underground. Let's make sure we have proper brush clearance. Let's make sure we're home hardening. None of this is rocket science. We just haven't done it. And the one thing that will hopefully come out of these tragedies is that we will realize that as quickly as possible, we need to change the way we're building, the materials we're using, and what we're keeping ourselves susceptible to by not properly maintaining our infrastructure.
Thank you. Let's go to Ellen.
So as the leader of a neighborhood association and a participant, a vice president in a neighborhood council that's 100% in a very high fire hazard severity zone, I might have some thoughts about this. So on January 7th, there were 2 small fires in my neighborhood. What do you think they were caused by? Aging electric infrastructure. So the number one thing I want to do to prevent fire is to modernize our infrastructure so the transformers stop exploding and the old wires stop arcing, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. We also need mitigation strategies. We need to really do a lot better job and coordinate with the federal government on doing more controlled burns. And you know what? Home hardening, there are parts of home hardening that are pretty expensive, but there are also some really effective measures that aren't expensive, like putting really fine mesh screens in your vents. And I think that's in a state bill that's been passed already, so we're going to be doing that and making ourselves safer.
Thanks. Brittany?
Yes, I think we need to absolutely invest in fire prevention and make sure that we can invest in training local volunteer fire corps, brush clearance, et cetera, everything that my fellow candidates have said. But home hardening is expensive. And one of the things we need to look at is the way that oil companies have contributed to climate change. Now, the result of this climate change has been wildfires that are becoming more frequent and more devastating. We need to explore revenue in this area and hold them accountable to this. For example, California is the only oil producing state that does not have an oil severance fee. That is something that I would say that Californians need to explore in order to bring more revenue to support things like home hardening.
Thanks. And Brian?
You know, more than 7,000 homes were destroyed in the Palisades and Malibu, including Shies, and I feel terrible for you and the loss for your family. We have a number of close friends who lost their homes, one of which we put up for a while as they were kind of getting on their feet. And one of the conversations I had with this family was, as they're trying to piece together, where are they going to go? How are they going to find housing? How do they keep their kids, above water? Where are they going to put them in school, et cetera? They're at the same time dealing with a really challenging bureaucratic process to get their plans, their permits approved for rebuilding. They had to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers coming in, changing the policy so that rather than doing what had been done for 30 years, where you dig for 6 inches, test for toxins, and then decide whether to clear more, basically they did blow and go. They don't want to know how toxic the soil is, how bad the air is. And so families like this are struggling not only with where to live, what to do, but how to rebuild. Is their old community safe? How do they manage the relationship with their insurance company? Sacramento has to reform our insurance so that it makes sense, but this is a much longer conversation.
Thank you. Okay, last fall, voters approved Prop 36 to increase sentencing for certain theft and drug crimes, and also voted former DA George Gascon out of office. What lessons should we draw from that outcome, and how should California rethink its approach to criminal justice reform? And we'll start with Mike.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Look, I think the lesson was one of unintended consequences, right? I think when Prop 47 originally passed, I think most of us thought is very needed reform. And what we saw at the end of the day was that you created a system whereby in the past, when you had people being held accountable for crimes, or in particular when you had people that were committing crimes because of drug offenses or addiction or things like that, that typical path of the judge saying the door right is jail, the door left is rehab, that was lost. And that was a big loss. You know, as I said, the personal stories in my own family and myself with addiction, and I know a lot of people who have been saved by that choice. And so I think one of the things that Proposition 36 was good about bringing back, and I know everybody doesn't agree with this. I know a lot of people in this room probably voted against it. I voted for it. And I supported it because I strongly believe that in order to save people from what was happening on the ground, crimes being committed out of desperation because of addiction, we needed tools like Prop 36 to help change that. So I think it's just identifying with reality on the ground, and that it's not fair to let people keep falling into this, and we need additional tools to be restored to get them back and to get them back to health and to make our communities more livable, right? Nobody likes toothpaste locked up at Walgreens. It's the bottom line.
Thanks. Ellen?
So we do need alternatives to incarceration. People, our jails are the largest warehouses, I don't know what better word there is, for people who are mentally ill and drug addicted. And we need to address that. So we need programs that don't involve incarceration to address that. At the same time, people were really upset about the crimes that were occurring that the proposition was meant to address. And we need to be flexible. I think the bottom line is that when you pass a law or you elect a person and you think they're going to do one thing and it doesn't really work out, you need to be able to shift. And if this law turns out to be one of those laws, we should be able to shift again.
Thank you. Shai?
Look, I've spent my life taking care of families that are affected by homelessness, are affected by having family members in prison, are affected by drug addiction and mental health issues. And what I know is that our safety net has a problem with uncoordinated care. It's not just under-resourced, but the coordination of care is inadequate. And so, you know, what we see all the time is patients who had appointments somewhere else for housing resources, they couldn't make the bus to make the appointment for their outpatient visit to see their cardiologist. And in the safety net system, if you miss your appointment, it's another 6 months, and that goes for all of the different services. And so the state definitely has a role, and I hope to play a role in that, in improved coordination of care among those services. And the state should, as the funding comes, the state should task local government to having that better coordination of care.
Thanks. Brian?
I was for Prop 36. I was for Nathan Hochman for DA. I was actually for Jeff Chemerinsky in round one, but then, you know, politics, like life, is full of imperfect choices. And so the choice was reelect George Gascon, who I thought was a failed district attorney. More than 90% of the people in his office voted to recall him. Or choose someone who was a little bit ideologically further from me, but I thought was a professional prosecutor. And I believe it was the right choice. The pendulum had swung too far toward permissiveness and permitting lawlessness, permitting property crime, permitting violent assaults in some cases. A message went out to law enforcement that, maybe you don't bother arresting because the DA is not going to prosecute. That was unacceptable. Everybody in our community ought to feel safe. I don't want to go back to mass incarceration. I don't want to go back to the 90s, but I do want everybody, not just those who can afford private security, to feel safe in their communities.
Thank you. Eric.
So I had the fortune of spending 6 years leading, and at times as chair of a public safety committee across 4 cities. And the morale that I experienced as part of the sheriff's department in particular, as well as the surrounding communities, was impacted significantly as it pertains to that feeling of, we'll do our job, but then prosecution won't happen. We needed to make sure that I think that the Prop 36 signaled to us that we need to do our job to make sure people feel safe. We all deserve to feel safe in our communities, so I supported it as well. And in addition to that, I had the fortune of spending 4 years on the prison industry board, which gave me great exposure to vocational programs, trainings, rehabilitative efforts that are real. So once we've held that person accountable, there's real pathways to getting them integrated into society again. And I've had great discussions with Sheriff Robert Loon about the idea of care campuses. So those with mental health needs and other acute needs can be addressed, and they can be reintroduced in society successfully.
Thanks. John.
I created the WeHo Cares team when I first got elected because I worked with our sheriff's department who wanted to make sure that they were addressing homelessness through a care perspective. West Hollywood had at that time the only city with a MET team, a mental evaluation team in LA County, but directly investing in care is never the wrong answer. We are all one paycheck or one stop away from being homeless in many times, and we're hearing that everywhere. But the criminalization of black bodies, of brown bodies, and of bodies that may not look like you is something that we really need to take seriously. Directly investing in homelessness service, social services, which the city just did. We actually went in $1 million into our reserves to make up for the funding deficits this last year that were experienced by the federal government through a number of our providers, are critical, and we need to make sure the state is playing that role in saying that when you invest in care, you invest in someone's future. We can stop people from going into homelessness, and we need to make sure that that starts at students who cannot afford or are living in their cars around community campuses, but we also need to make sure that people do not go hungry. And if someone's going to jail for going hungry every night, we are failing as a society. And as someone who worked in a food shelter with my grandmother when I was 8, it didn't matter who walked through those doors. You fed them and you smiled and you said, have a great day.
Okay, thanks. And Brittany?
Yes, restorative justice is smart justice. As a civil rights advocate, as president of the Human Relations Commission, I've worked with the ACLU, I've worked with organizations like INCLO, I've worked with the Los Angeles Police Department to make policy recommendations for holistic remedies to address and prevent crime. We know that increased sentencing, increased incarceration is not only ineffective, but we know who it targets. People who look like me, brown and black communities. It's not effective. It's incredibly expensive. And as a legislator, I would continue the work that I have been doing as a civil rights advocate to promote restorative justice.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to the next question. We're getting to the home stretch here. Don't worry.
Don't threaten us with a good time.
Cindy's got you, I think. Okay. Last night, the Santa Monica City Council voted to declare the city in financial distress. What tools should the state provide to cities like Santa Monica, which find themselves in a post-pandemic financial crisis due to a host of external and internal problems? And we'll go to Ellen first.
Okay. The state should make sure that the people of Santa Monica are safe, that they have the services they need, and the state should help the city of Santa Monica make a plan for getting back on track. Because the role of government is to take care of people, and people live in cities.
Okay, Eric.
Thank you. And this story, of course, for the city of Santa Monica is a common story, and we're going to start to hear examples more and more like this across our whole region. It's critical that the state play an important role in developing an economic development plan that will assist on the revenue side of the ledger for these communities. That means investments ensuring that property tax stays stable and continue to grow, that sales tax opportunities are there, that we're pushing tourism, that we're getting people into our communities to take advantage of our small businesses. All those things need to happen and can be done with the assistance of the state. With that said, I think we have a real fiscal accountability crisis, and as someone who was able to oversee 7 years straight of balanced budgets and was able to cut taxes multiple times, there's also this opportunity to really dig in and make sure that our leaders at the municipal level are being held accountable to ensure that they're making those tough decisions in areas that they have opportunity to improve those budgets. Thank you.
Okay, and Shai.
I think it's critical that the state senator from this district makes sure that the constituents have the services they need. And we saw this with the Palisades fire. One of the critical things that the state has done to help is with staffing in cities to provide services like permitting, so that the planning departments and the supporting departments aren't overwhelmed and they have adequate staffing to help the residents. And I think that similarly, as budgets are cut, making sure that the residents have the services they need and the staffing support that the cities need to provide those services, not just ever, but in a timely fashion, reasonably timely fashion. I think that's critical, and that's something that the state can help with.
Thank you, Mike.
Look, the city of Los Angeles was $800 million short, predominantly because of settled lawsuits that never should have been settled. The city of Santa Monica, with what just happened, a huge chunk of that, we have a couple of city council members here, as they know, are because of legal settlements. Some of those legal settlements had to be made. Some very bad stuff happened, and you have no choice. But what we have to start doing is city attorneys in different cities and city councils have to start thinking about where do we settle and burden ourselves with those costs for years and sometimes decades on end, and when do we go to trial? There has been too much of a willingness of city attorneys. I'm not saying necessarily in Santa Monica. I'm just pointing out that Santa Monica, a big part of the issue is due to legal settlements. In Los Angeles, $350 million of the issue of the 800 was due to legal settlements. We've got to make better decisions about where we send our money, and settling a case that you should try is not a good use of taxpayers' money.
Thanks. Brian?
Hundreds of children were sexually abused in Santa Monica over a period of decades. That is the fundamental driver of the fiscal distress that the city finds itself in. Those victims deserved some measure of justice. But this is not the responsibility of the current leaders of Santa Monica, who have to clean up the mess. And so from my perspective, the state ought to partner with them in a very collaborative way to figure out a path out. And it shouldn't just be about cutting things back. It should be about how do we grow and thrive and produce more revenue as a city. Santa Monica is a jewel of California. It's an amazing economic asset. It includes a lot of amazing economic assets, and the state should be a very good partner to Santa Monica to figure out a prosperous path forward.
Thank you. John?
Fiscal responsibility is the core principle of every local elected official, but also budgets are statements of priorities. I believe there is a Senator John Laird bill that is up in Sacramento still with the city of Santa Monica working to work out the claimant issue. I agree that people that are survivors of sexual assault, the most egregious thing that if you've read about the case, that is occurring. But we are looking at, and the state is looking at already, partnership ways to make sure that that doesn't happen. When we look at how the state plays a role in investing in local communities, it's through a lot of funds that can be made to improve infrastructure. In West Hollywood, that was investing in social services, whether that was at our log cabin. I'm so thankful for Senator Allen and Assemblymember Rick Chavez-Zabur for directing those funds, even in a budget deficit, to make sure those social services continued. But the city then also has a responsibility to make sure that when we're looking at social services being cut at the state, where are local cities going to skimp? And we need to do all that we can to make sure we have a collaborative approach, especially in this district, and what the state senator can play and what dollars they're able to allocate, both as a state as well as within our own purse.
Thanks, and Brittany.
Yes, I think it's our responsibility as state legislators to make sure that when we are balancing the budget, we are not doing so on the backs of the most vulnerable, that we are really tackling the issues that we are facing in terms of affordability for general costs of living, for healthcare, for housing, and that when we look to helping cities like Santa Monica getting out of such a fiscal crisis, that we explore alternative revenues, such like the oil severance fee I mentioned, such like the Polluters Superfund Act that Ben Allen championed as well.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to the next question. Many below-the-line workers in Hollywood, like me, are struggling or leaving the industry altogether after years of instability due to a multitude of factors, including automation, media consolidation, and so many. I could go on forever about it. Beyond this year's tax credit expansion from the legislature, which Governor Newsom just signed, what steps should the legislature take to ensure entertainment jobs return and stay in Los Angeles? Start with Shai.
Thank you. And I supported that film tax credit, and I think that wasn't anything more than a stabilizing force as, jobs have left California in the entertainment system. And so, we need to do more, similarly. But the biggest thing is affordability. We've talked about this all night, and I think that, we pointed to the affordability of not just living in California, living in Los Angeles, living in the district, but also the cost of doing business. And so the things we can do to bring down affordability, and again, it is driven by housing. And so, anything that we can do to make living in the district more affordable is going to help bring jobs back.
Thanks. Brian.
I was also a supporter of that legislation. I believe it's a floor and not a ceiling. We were able, I think by the analysis of the industry, to bring back 22 new TV or streaming series as a result of that law, that greater subsidy passing. That said, we're still not competitive with other states and other countries because we don't do above the line and because our limit is still relatively low. So I would champion a greater tax credit. I would work to persuade our friends from Northern California that this is not a subsidy for big stars and big corporations, but in fact, a critical economic driver toward preventing us from becoming the Detroit of the entertainment industry. We also need to champion the affordability measures that we've all discussed, look at permitting and regulatory reform. There are a whole host of things that we can do.
Thanks. Mike?
Take them both. Look, the tax credits were great and it was helpful, but the tax credits only help, obviously, if you make money on a production, right? So what we also have to obviously look at is how do we get productions here? How do we get them to want to stay here, to be here as a destination? And some of the other folks have talked about this, but you have filming going to Budapest. You have it going to other countries where there just is literally no upfront cost. There's no permitting fees. There's nothing. You show up and the country makes the money on an 8x multiplier on the hotels, on the restaurants, on the tax revenue paid by people that work. It was the same model that worked in New Orleans. It was the same model that worked in Georgia and that worked in Vancouver when everything started leaving. So I literally strongly advocate for no costs whatsoever upfront. Come here and film, and we'll go ahead and make it on the multipliers, on the restaurants, on the hotels, on the jobs, on the revenue. And on top of it, I would also look at increasing the tax credits on the back end so that you also have that available when a production does really well. We got to seed this thing. We got to get it going again. And once we do that, then we can reevaluate what we want to do with our financial incentives.
Thanks. John.
I'm proud to be endorsed by the workers of Unite Here, Local 11, and many other labor unions because we cannot set standards on the backs of workers, including people in the Writers Guild as well as people in the movie industry who are trying to work to get back to good paying union jobs, as well as since the writer strike. And that writer strike and director strike and everything that we've been seeing is going to happen again, and we're going to need to play a really critical role. We cannot make sure, we must ensure that we do not make it harder for workers to get work. We need to get them back to work, and that's tax incentives. The bill was the floor, not the ceiling. We need to be much more aggressive, and if they say you can't, we have to really look at how we are taxing and what we're looking at movie studios who are utilizing AI that is hurting our writers and our producers at all levels versus actually helping bring back the movie industry. California, when you think about coming out here, you go, you see the beach, you see the films, you see everything. Santa Monica has a big piece of that, but we need to make sure that Hollywood dream is alive for the next generation.
Thank you. Ellen.
As a former member of IATSE, I remember how hard it was to get a job even when times were good. And then in the 90s, Vancouver started giving tax credits, and then other states started giving tax credits. And productions left, and those places developed the infrastructure and the labor force to take over and became very attractive. And California didn't start its tax credit program until 2009. Shame on us. We have to do better. We have to do better for our people. The tax credit that was passed is good, but it's not good enough. It's not something that producers can count on getting. It's not something you get in television, I think, beyond the first season. We need to actually create the incentive that'll make people stay here. California is a great place. I think production can come back, but we are going to need to work hard like those other states did to take it from us.
Thanks. Brittany.
Yes, my parents were Hollywood entertainers. They danced their way out of poverty, starting out in Venice Beach with their hat on the floor. They got discovered, were able to join SAG-AFTRA, and through that union, they were able to pull our family and pull themselves out of poverty. I understand the real economic opportunities that come from the entertainment industry. I've benefited from that. So I think what legislators have done currently with the tax credit is a great start, but there's so much more that we need to do to keep Hollywood jobs in Hollywood and to bring Hollywood back to that same economy of opportunity that my parents benefited from.
Thank you. Eric.
So I had an opportunity to be a California film commissioner and oversee the tax program and see firsthand certainly the multiplier effect that this investment had. It's the ROI, the return on investment of doing this is significant. So it needs to continue to be expanded. Even though it's an upfront investment, ultimately you see that money come back into the economy, and that's critical. One of the challenges that we ran into was filming, particularly in LA County, and the challenges of coordination, permitting as well. And so although that's a minute thing, there's an opportunity for efficiency in permitting and improvements in that area to ensure that when they do come back to film, that there's a very easy process that they are going to encounter as well. So I think both of those things together are going to be critical to ensure that we continue to get our filming back into California. And as was noted, it is the jewel of California and the California experience. We represent the California dream, and a big part of that, of course, is our story as a community in film and then the arts. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, a quick follow-up on that question. The Emmy Awards are coming up this Sunday. Does anyone have any predictions on who might win any of the big awards? Anyone want to?
Do you really want the gay to talk about the Emmys?
Please. We'll run the tape back on Monday. We'll see how you do.
Well, Gene's smart. We got Hacks, which filmed in Los Angeles, by the way. I mean, we can keep going if you want to go into drama categories, but if you watch The White Lotus, you already know how it's going to go. So we can get going, but that's not a question. And now you got to let them all answer because we got to know what they're watching on the free
Anyone else want to weigh in here?
John's just trying to steal answers for his pool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out my picks for the Oscar predictions, or the Emmy predictions, yeah. White Lotus, okay, we'll find out on Sunday night. Let's go to our closing statements. First up, it's 1 minute. First up is Brian.
Well, thanks, everyone. We've gotten to the everything's been said, but not everyone has said it phase of the evening. Thank you for taking the time and being here. You know, I'm running because we've got to make it easier and more affordable to live here. The California dream can't be a state of just very rich and very poor people. We've got to save our middle class. We've got to prevent working people from leaving. We've got to take on hate in our society, including anti-Semitism, Asian hate, racism, what Latino families are facing right now. We've got to prepare our state and reorient our politics to the future, not the past. We can't train our kids for the world of the 1950s. We've got to prepare them for the world of the 2050s, accelerating climate danger, disruptive technologies like AI and automation, all sorts of challenges that our parents and grandparents couldn't imagine. And finally, we've got to make sure that people feel safe, that we take on crime and homelessness and we do it in a just way that brings people together, not going back to mass incarceration or the policies of the 90s, but also not letting the pendulum swing too far toward permissiveness either. I'm actually very optimistic about the future of California. We have everything going for us in the world. We've just got to make sure that these forces that are coming to take us down, whether it's Trump in Washington, whether it's this affordability crisis at home, a failure of our politics, we stay on top of these things. And I think with new leadership, new ideas, we can meet the challenges of the next 12 years.
Thank you. Eric.
Thank you to all for being here this evening, and thanks, John. You did a great job moderating. Tonight's been a great evening with my colleagues and fellow candidates of great ideas and intentions and thoughts. Results matter, and as a council member, as a school board member, I had the opportunity to take significant role in leading through crisis, leading our city and operating through the coronavirus pandemic. During the wildfire challenges, installing artificial intelligence cameras that pick up fires within 360 degrees to ensure that people are safe. When the Portuguese Bend landslide challenges faced our community, the acceleration of that landslide, I took quick action to ensure that we had a local emergency in place to get the resources needed. When our schools were falling apart, as a school board member, I had the chance to implement a school bond that was successful. Results matter, experience matters, and I look forward to a future in California that my kids will all enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks. Mike.
Look, first of all, thank you, everybody. It's been really great and really great questions, great audience. Look, I'm excited about this race because it's one of those situations where our needs, I feel, meets my preparation. What I mean by that is, first of all, we need a lot of housing to be built and for it to be built quickly. I've been representing builders of housing for 25 years. I've served on planning commissions for the better part of the last 10 years. I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to work on that. We have a massive climate change problem right now, and we are in a district that has the coast from Malibu all the way down to Palos Verdes. It's important that whoever's sitting in this chair next has a significant background in not only environmental science and environmental law, but has been doing this kind of work for decades, especially as it comes to climate protection, habitat, species, and energy. Number 3, homelessness. We didn't talk about it a ton in particular here today, but look, 7 people a day are dying on the streets of LA County, right? We've been reduced to a situation where we're talking about a 4% decrease in homelessness is some amazing thing when it's raised 10 times over in the last 15 years, and here in Santa Monica, it raised 5% last year. We have to be realistic about not only building housing, not only providing wraparound services, but actually having a sunset by where we can say to people, we have services, we have housing, but streets are not for living. It's a very important part of this, and we have to come to grips with that concept. And I think that's one of the things I want to bring to this as well. But I really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much, John. You did a great job, and happy to be here.
Thanks, Mike. John.
Jeez Louise. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm endorsed by people like Sheila Kuehl, Lindsay Horvath, Janice Hahn, Hilda Solis, Catherine Barger, Amy Thomas Holworth, a countless number of individuals throughout this district because I've built regional leadership in my time on the city council, as well as regional leadership in Sacramento. I know what to do on day one. When I was vice president of Planned Parenthood, we were working on policy fixes pre-pandemic and post-pandemic and post and pre-new Trump administrations to make sure we're impacting the serious issues affecting reproductive health care. As an LGBTQ leader and as someone whose community is under attack right now, I know firsthand the policy fixes that we need to make sure we're doing at the state to make sure no one goes to bed afraid or no one's afraid to walk outside their door. As someone who works in nonprofit management specifically for Latino communities, I know direct investments into communities of color serve dividends over and over. I am a regional-based leader. I see a problem, I attack it, I fix it, and I've got the results to show for it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Brittany.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here and listen to all of us. My experience is broad and unique. As a civil rights advocate, I've led the fight against hate and anti-Semitism. I've been actively standing up against Trump. As an attorney, I represent businesses, domestic violence survivors, as well as immigrants seeking asylum. I am a delegate to the Democratic Party. I am also a young Democrat. I am proud to be endorsed by Democratic leaders such as Assemblymember Tina McKinnon, Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas, former Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer, and the Black Los Angeles Young Democrats. I am running so that I can continue the work that I have been doing, being a champion for civil rights, attacking this issue of affordability, and to continue to stand up against Trump and bolster our education here in California. I would be honored to have your endorsement to be the first Black state senator of this district and to be able to champion for you up in Sacramento.
Thank you. And finally, Shai.
Thank you.
No, sorry. Not finally. Sorry. Go. Shai and Ellen. Sorry.
Should I go?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. This has been a great night. Thank you, John. I've lived in this district. I've lived in Santa Monica. I've led in Santa Monica. And because of that, the 22 out of the 26 current electeds in Santa Monica are supporting me and trust me to be the state senator up there. I've led through difficult times, and I've lived through difficult times in this district. And I know that when there are tough times, people come together and accomplish things that you never think would be possible. You know, with John, we led the Santa Monica Democratic Club together in 2016 when Trump first got elected, and we led our party forward. In 2020, I was president of the LA County Medical Association at the beginning of COVID, and we led our county forward. And during the January fires, I saw how our community came together to go forward and work on the issues to help families. I saw it, my family felt it, and I hope to take that experience up to Sacramento.
Thank you. And now, finally, Ellen.
Thanks so much for sitting here and listening to what we have to say. I'm a civil rights advocate, not afraid to get arrested. For the past 10 years, though, I've been serving my community, solving problems, influencing policy, delivering on what people want. People in my community wanted safety. We delivered safety. People in my community wanted community. We delivered community. I've been doing this without power and without resources. And what I want to do is serve you and deliver what you need. Because I know that we need, in the state of California, affordability, opportunity, jobs that can't be taken by AI and can't be shipped overseas or automated. And we need safety. And I know how to work on all of those things. I've been doing it for a decade. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, folks. Let's give it up for our candidates one more time. I want to take a quick opportunity to thank Sam for timekeeping, to thank Nate up in the booth. We'll see you guys next week, 1 week from tonight on Zoom. We're going to endorse in this race and others. See you then. Hey, thanks a lot.